I would joke around and say learn to code, but that doesn't work anymore. Not now that AI is taking over.
AI is crazy these days. Ike?
But it's like AI, we have to embrace AI. Like imagine being a farmer that uses the plow, right? You got a field and you're plowing the field, and then tractor comes out, right? The engine power is automatic, and all the farmers are starting to use the tractors. They're finishing much faster than you. They're, sometimes it destroys a little more than it should have, but they can keep farming.
Yeah,
You can't be the farmer with just the plow. You need to learn to use the tractor.
definitely. I 100% agree with your explanation. 네, 안녕하세요, 아이크. 잘 지냈어요?
안녕하세요. 네, 잘 지내세요.
Okay, have you ever experienced like that recording? I mean, someone's the YouTube video or the podcast?
Me? No, 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 not really. I don't, not that I can remember. Never any recordings, no. I've done like stuff on stage, like
Mm,
conferences, but I've never had a recording put on YouTube that I
okay,
know of.
so it will be your first debut. I'm so
Yes.
glad. Did you notice that I bought this expensive one, this
Oh,
mic?
wow. You're a real
Oh,
podcaster. Oh,
yeah, real podcaster, but I'm
yeah.
super newbie. Okay. Okay, so we're gonna start. I'm gonna make this the editing point. Hi, Ike.
Ayun.
Hey, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for being
Thanks for
here.
having me. Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, how are you?
I'm doing all right. It's kind of strange for me because right now in Georgia it's snowing,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not really used to snow since I lived in Florida most of my life.
Oh my gosh, there is a snowing now. I've never
Yeah,
heard about the Florida has like that snowing.
I'm in Florida. I'm in Georgia now, so I'm
You are
moving.
in Georgia. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is a little
Okay. So,
more north.
I see. Okay. So that's the reason why now you are wearing like the long sleeve jumper. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, and I
I
have a heater going.
okay. Okay, I uh for the listeners, for the this podcast listeners, could you please introduce yourself,
Yeah,
including
so
like your background, what do you do for your living, and your hobbies? Anything you
mhm.
wanted to add? Mhm.
Yeah, so my name's Isaac Yusuf, but I go by Ike with all my friends. Like family call me Isaac, work calls me Isaac. So you'll see, LinkedIn probably says Isaac, that kind of thing. I work professionally as a software engineer, so I contract and I have a job as a full time uh not game developer, but I work for a game company where I code the gameplay networking code, so the multiplayer code. So I manage those uh, game servers and the code for the game servers, that kind of thing. But my hobby is, or one of my hobbies, is game development itself. So like writing
Mm,
game systems and that kind of thing. So that's how I spend most of my time. People like to, you know, go out and do things for fun. I'm at the point where I prefer to stay home and get things done, or in code, which you probably
mhm.
know since you think that's crazy. So I
Yeah,
prefer to
it's a
stay home
crazy
and
one.
code. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, do you wanted to add more, or let me elaborate more about you?
Well, whatever you feel like I should share.
Okay, so for the listeners, uh, I have to say, Ike is one of the very attractive people I've met. As Ike already explained
Two
it,
is too
he
kind.
yeah, he is like very amazing person. Yeah, he is working as software engineer, and he is actually polyglot. He can speak in English, Portuguese, and also Korean. Interestingly,
Not, not yet. One day I'll speak Korean well. I speak it very little. Yeah.
yeah, and also he explained it about his hobby. He's a game developer, and he explained it. His one of the hobbies is to develop his own game, but it is a crazy one for me actually. I've never seen who can say like my hobby is programming. So he was the first person he described like that as his hobby. And also he is anime lover. Is it okay to say?
That's supposed to be a secret, but yes, I am a very big fan of anime. Yeah,
Okay, I understand. And also you have many hobbies. As far as I know, you've learning about the dancing
yeah.
and the other things.
Salsa and
So
bachata. Yeah.
what was that?
Salsa and bachata.
Ah, salsa and
Bachata.
bachata. Bachata. Okay. So yeah, as I said, you are very attractive people. And one day you described what person you wanted to be look like. You said like, I want to be like 대박 남자.
Maybe it sounds like something I'd
Yeah.
say. I would like to be Deepak. Yeah.
Yeah. 대박 남자 is the amazing man, awesome man. So I think now you are the journey of this 대박 남자, right?
I
Yeah.
want my grandkids to say my grandpa was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I think your grandsons will consider you a very good person. Yeah. So as I described about Ike, he is like the 취미 부자. 취미 부자 means like the hobby richer. So yeah, he is a very amazing and attractive person. So and also as I pointed out, he's one of interesting hobby is to learn Korean. So we wanted to talk about your journey of how you first met Korean and why did you still learn Korean as your hobby?
So it's not a proud one anymore. I used to be like, yeah, this is great. So I used to play a lot of League of Legends. Korea is huge in League of Legends, and I'm an anime fan. A lot of my friends want to go to Japan, but in my mind, Korea just seemed much cooler to me. Like
Mm,
I used to watch videos of like um people walking with camera in Seoul and Busan, and I would see at night the lights in the city. I was like, wow, I would love to live here. It looks very very interesting, and especially for someone in software. Lots of cafes I could go sit and code, that sort of thing. So that's why I decided Korea. But
mm-hmm,
then I wanted to travel. It's also like, actually, I should go back a little bit. I was working for a software company in Tampa,
mm-hmm,
and uh, one day I received, in the next sprint. We went over the next sprint, and I said, I'm done. I'm sick of this. I don't want to do this anymore. I sent the email. I'm quitting. I'm done. I'm gonna go travel, and I
mm,
decided to do South Korea because first I saw stuff about it, did lots of gamer culture, PC bongs, all that stuff, good stuff,
mm-hmm,
and hagwons. So if you work for a
mm,
hagwon, they pay your rent. So I thought to myself, what's the best way for me to work for myself and live somewhere comfortable? There was no better place than working for a hagwon in South Korea, where between classes I could code. On my time off,
mm-hmm,
I could code, and my rent is
mm-hmm.
paid. So I didn't have to
Whoa.
worry about a lot, right?
Mm-hmm,
So that's when I really started focusing on certain aspects of programs. So I started a like streaming technology stack, which helped me late in a project in the future. So
mm-hmm.
that's a good thing that came out of me moving to Korea. But yeah, that's why I
Yeah.
chose Korea. Just convenient, nice place. It's difficult to really to pinpoint one exact thing.
Okay. So when was that, by the way, Ike? What
Mm.
age were you when you first settled in Korea?
So that was like 2018, I think 2018, 2019. So 7 years ago.
2018.
So I was
Okay.
25, 25, 26.
25. Okay. So what was your most interesting part when you stayed in Korea when you were mid 20?
Most interesting to me actually was that it wasn't as Korean as I thought it would be. It like I don't
Mhm.
know how to say that, but so first day I arrive in Korea, I go downstairs and I was gonna go look for food.
Mhm.
Everything is written in Hangul, right? But
Yeah.
and it's easy to learn to read Hangul. So that's the first thing I did. I learned to read Hangul, so I knew how to read signs. And I went to look for food, and I saw chicken. I was like,
Chicken.
okay, that must be chicken, right? And but when learning Korean, is it dakgogi? So I was like, that's
Mhm.
interesting. Why chicken? And then I started realizing that it's not as traditional as I thought it was going to be. It's in Asian countries, Korean, but westernized, right? You
Mhm.
walk down
Mhm.
the street, it's a lot of KT, it's a lot of convenience store, a lot of GS25. So it wasn't as like traditional as I thought it was going to be.
Mhm. Okay. Um, okay, so now we are talking about your first journey when you worked in Korea as English teacher, right? So could you tell me more about your working experience? As I
Yeah.
said, you worked as English teacher in
hmm
Korea all of a sudden.
Yeah.
So how was it?
I'll be honest, it was my first 2 days. I think I used to be more awkward than I am now, right? 'Cause I sit on the computer all the
Mm,
time. I don't really socialize too often. I do have my friends, but going to a country where I barely understand the language
mhm,
and I had to teach kids English, I was
mhm.
very shy. You know, I was like, "Oh, no, I'm gonna teach the kids wrong." So or they're not gonna like me, they're gonna be brats, I don't know what to do.
Mm,
But after a couple weeks, it became normal. It was more of a I had to s so it was I needed to just help the kids have fun. So when they
mhm,
came to English class, the foreign teachers were their favorite because all day they're young kids, right, up to high school. They're like elementary to high school. And they would study all day. That's all they did, just
exactly.
study, 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 study. When they get to the foreign teacher's English class, it's fun time, right?
Mm,
So I kinda realized, okay, let's let them have fun. They're stressed out all the time. Let's enjoy our time together. So we'd play games, make sure to speak a lot of English with them, and yeah, I ended up enjoying it a lot. I actually miss my students a lot.
okay. So specifically, you lived in Changwon when
Hangwon,
you,
yeah.
yeah, Changwon, and you worked as English teacher. And as you said, it's true. Actually, the most of Korean students are so tragically they spend a bunch of time to study for their future, so they don't have any fun time. But yeah, I'm so happy you made them happy and make the fun time with them. And also, I remember that when you described about the city and the building you've working as English teacher, there are different types of the stores. I mean, the first store is convenience store. Second floor is hagwon, and third floor is PC방, and fourth is the bar. So it was so interesting to me. Actually, I've never been there, but yeah,
Mhm.
there's kind of buildings here and there in Korea. So how was
Yeah.
it, by the way? Was it so interesting to you?
It was. So there's actually multiple levels to this. First, it was very interesting because I would go out drinking with friends
Mm.
and we would, start on the first floor, eat some chicken, drink
Uh-huh.
some beer, go to the second floor, play some pool, right?
Mm.
Like, or whatever, play or karaoke or whatever, play games. Next floor, bar. And then you just keep leveling up throughout the night.
Yeah.
And then that's what's funny. Someone told me that. I don't remember. It might have been you actually that told me that, yeah, it's like a thing in Korea, and then it clicked in my the last top floor is always a hotel or motel, and I always thought that was fine because of people, 'cause a lot of Koreans, when they're in their 20s, 30s, they live at home with their parents. So if they have a girlfriend,
Mm.
I don't think they can go
Mm.
home, can they, with their girlfriend?
There's a
But
stay
so
there. Hmm.
I
Yeah.
always thought that was very funny. So
Yeah.
that was
So.
interesting to me. But the second thing that was also always interesting to me was that I feel like a lot of cities in South Korea are just very empty. So
Mhm.
Busan, very busy. Seoul is very busy. But Changwon, outside of like the very central area, you'd go to these buildings with, multiple levels, and
Mhm.
most of it's empty. There's nothing there.
Mm.
Like you never see anyone. There's like one bar that's very full, and everything else there's nothing, empty. So that was
Mm.
always interesting to me.
Yeah, I think it is very common outside, like, the very big city, like the Seoul and Busan and the other cities, there are not many population. So just only the center of the city, they are very crowded, but outside is very empty, right? I'm curious about American people consider the quarter life crisis because the quarter life crisis isn't exist in Korea. The word I actually first learned from you.
Yeah. Well, it's actually supposed to be midlife crisis.
Midlife
Maybe
crisis.
quarter life.
Okay.
I think quarter life crisis. I just said that because that's how I felt. Right. I'm quarter life, and I was over it. I'm surprised
uh-huh.
Koreans don't have that feeling. That feeling of dread of you're going to be studying, studying, studying. You're studying to be a lawyer or engineer or doctor, but everyone else
Mm.
is also studying to be a lawyer, engineer, and doctor. So when you finish
Uh-huh.
college, you have all that competition. That would that would destroy me.
Right. I think we have the similar concept, but the milestone is the different. As Korean, most of the men, we went to the military, right? And after we finish the military service and then we get our job, age is around 25 or 26. A little late comparison to the other,
Mm.
countries of men. So we consider the 30 and 40 are the most crisis time for the man. The number 30 and 40 that makes men always very stressed and tragedy. So maybe the different, the age number we consider
Yeah,
like the
that makes
life is
sense.
crisis. All right. So we go back to your hobbies. Yeah. I want to heard more about your story, why you first start your Korean language and why you are still learning the Korean.
Yeah. So I started learning because, we talked about earlier how I liked Korean gaming culture and even traditional
Mm.
culture, and actually saw myself living there for a much longer period. But COVID ruined that. But COVID happened while I was there, started while I was there. And I didn't have family or anything in Korea. I didn't know how bad
Mm.
the COVID was going to be. So I decided to leave to make sure, I can still progress. If get stuck in Korea and I can't keep progressing with my goals, that would be a problem. So I moved back to the US and I did keep learning Korean. I stopped for like a few months and I started again and stopped for a few months. I am actually now taking a Korean class at uh, a university. It's like there's a college
Mm.
a Korean university that has a program here in the US. It's called
Okay.
yeah, actually some of their books. Sogang
Ah,
Sogang
Sogang
I think it's
University. Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
So they do programs here and it's really close. So the area I live in, there's a huge population of South Koreans, and I didn't know that until I moved here. And yeah, so now I'm learning just for the sake of learning, and because the company I work for has a huge MMO that
Hmm.
they want to expand to Korea. So hopefully, if everything works out, I could start participating in South Korean
Hmm.
uh, like business, like developer, getting involved with the players in South Korea, that kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah. I really hope one day you will just settle in Korea for your
Yeah,
business.
at
Yeah.
least for a while, I would love to. Yeah, it's a very comfortable country.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds great. Okay. All right. So, yeah, I want to, please understand me. This is my first time to record the podcast. So maybe every question is just shuffled.
It's
But,
fine. My first time on a podcast, so I don't really know how it works either.
yeah, so just feel comfortable. You just say whatever you want because I just want to make this podcast as casual as I can. So
Mhm.
whatever you just comes to your mind, just spit it, and then I'm gonna make it very good editing. So no worries at all. Okay.
Okay. I'll try my best. Okay,
Okay.
so it's not live. Okay, cool. So I can say things that aren't allowed.
Okay. Yeah. We talked about your quarter-life crisis and your journey of Korean learning. And I actually talk about this one of the main today's topics is about Korean man versus American man. We cannot say we represent the ordinary, the each country's man, but as I said, you are the very attractive man in America. I also think I am a very ordinary Korean man. So
I don't think so. I
maybe
think you're pretty. I think you're you're cooler than you think you are. You're underestimating
thank
yourself.
you. Oh, okay. Thank you so much. All right. So we're gonna talk about the two different countries, man. All right. So let me talk about it first. From my observation, I want to talk about the outfit and appearance first. From my observation, most of American they want to look like as masculine as they can. Yeah. And
I would
also,
say. Oh, go
uh-huh.
ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I want to cut you off. I'll I'll tell you what I
Okay.
think after.
Yeah, because I just heard that I've never met many American men, but when I watched some of the American men's story and the video things, they sometimes hesitated to wear like very vivid color of t-shirts. They don't want to look like they are gay, something like that,
Hmm.
and always want to look like cool, cool person. And also they have like the beard all the time and they don't care about their outfit and their appearances sometimes. So I feel like most of American they tend to look like very macho style men. But on the other hand, from my case, from my point of view, I mean, most of Korean men we tend to look as younger as we can. So we don't have a beard and we care a lot about our skin and hair. And also we are very following the trend and passion. So we always wear like the branded things. So this is the main difference that I've experienced between two different, countries' men's. Do you agree with me or you have some different thought?
I agree to a certain extent. So I think it's even broader than just men. It extends to women. So men only do the things we do. We live, breathe. This is my opinion, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
People won't agree, and they're gonna think, "Oh, you're crazy." But everything men do, like the reason we work, the reason we exercise, the reason we do anything, is because
Mm.
of women. Like everything we do,
Because
right? Could
okay.
be, yeah, right. Everything we do is because of women. Like the sole goal in our head, in our programming, in our brains, we're programmed to, yeah,
Yeah.
make baby, proceed your lineage. Right, that's it.
I
So,
this is a really great point. We're gonna make the shorts. Everybody just do hook and then listen to this podcast. Okay, go ahead.
okay, I'll make it short. Okay,
Okay.
so the the so shoot, now what I was saying. Oh, so
Mm-hmm.
actually, it used to be where being very masculine would get you women, right? So that's what people
Mm-hmm.
did. What's I think the fastest growing culture now has to be a Korean culture, like K-pop,
Mm-hmm.
K-dramas,
Mm-hmm.
Korean media. So
Mm-hmm.
what do and women love that stuff, right? So they love the K-pop idols; they're obsessed with it, like BTS, Stray Kids, all that stuff. So men start to become like that. So American
Mm-hmm.
men, I even see it now, they're trying to become like K-pop idols, K-pop
Oh.
stars. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so it's less being the or masculine that you're thinking of, like Wild West, American, like Captain America. That's no longer what I think American men are doing. They're starting to
Uh-huh.
become more like K-pop stars because that's what women like.
Really?
That's
Oh
my
my
opinion.
gosh.
Yeah. I see
Okay.
more men that are more feminine traditionally than they
Mm-hmm.
used to be.
Okay. How about you, Ike? You are following that trend these days?
Me, no. I do what I like to do. So
Okay.
I don't care what other people care. I like to do what I like to do.
Okay. I think I've never seen your baby face. You're after
Yeah, no,
shaving.
no,
Yeah.
probably not.
Okay. One day you will work in Korea for your career. I think you're
Mhm.
gonna shave your beard.
Nah,
No?
it's not gonna happen. No, it won't. Hey, one day
Okay.
beers will come back to Korea too. I think Koreans used to have
I
beards,
don't
right?
think so.
Uh,
It's a very rare, especially when Korean men work at the company. If they have like the regular job, they never grow their beard. It's a very rare, actually. Everybody consider them like, oh, you don't care about yourself. You have to groom yourself like that. So yeah, it's a very different things between American and Korean, especially the appearance. Hmm.
Actually,
Yeah.
companies here too is it used to be not so much anymore where you clean shaven was better
Hmm.
as well. It used to be like that. Now I don't think people care too much.
Okay. Okay. All right. Um, is there anything you've observed about Korean men's specific um character? Maybe like you said, Korean tends to look like a K-pop idol, and mhm,
So I
rather
think
than
Korea as a whole is a very vain country. Like you said, they care about appearance. It's
mhm,
very big. Caring about your appearance, like wearing brands, having having an Apple product over, an Android or something, like, that's important to Koreans. Like,
uh-huh,
I'd sit at a cafe, and I'd see someone on a MacBook, the oldest MacBook possible, very slow. You could buy something better, for the same price, but they chose that because it had the Apple logo on it. Like, I think that's
exactly.
why they did it, I'm assuming, and you'd see that a lot. That's just Korea as a whole. Korean men particularly
Mhm,
is interesting. I have a lot of opinions on it actually. In I think they drink too much and they
mhm,
they spoil their potential. So, 'cause I would see that, I would go drinking, when I was younger. I used to go drinking a lot. In Korea, I learned this while I was there. Like you can't start a fight because you will go to jail, especially as a foreigner. But they would get drunk and try to start fights with me all the time.
mm,
But
okay.
they wouldn't throw any punches around. They would just stand there and like yell at me. And that gave me the impression that I think Korean men are struggling with something. I can't put my finger on it. The younger Korean men,
Mhm,
and they're
mhm,
frustrated.
mhm,
And, they go out and drink, and that's not going to solve their problem. But
mhm,
yeah, that's just the impression I got. They try to
okay,
start fights just because of stress. They're stressed out.
okay. Who 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 met you in Korea? Like, your story sounds so wild, actually.
Yeah, Changwon is a very party city.
Chang Wow.
Apparently, out of bars, it has the
Mm.
most bars in a small area in most of Korea. It's like in
Ah,
one
okay.
area, there's so many bars. So I guess people go there to party. I That's what
Mm,
it felt like.
okay. So, alcohol always makes some trouble. So
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
that's the thing. All right. Okay. I'm curious about American people also care about their hair. I mean, definitely they care hair, but I saw many American is bald. And I feel like they just let them disappear. They don't care about losing their hair. So I'm always wonder, because
I think
Korea,
that
mhm,
yeah,
when,
Koreans,
Kor- mhm, yeah, the Korean, you know, if we lose our hair, first thing we go to the hospital and take some medicine, and then really care about our hair, because
mhm.
losing hair means like our life is, you know, very short. I mean, attract attraction of the man will disappear. We just consider like that. Korean men really care about our hair, and most of women really hate bald people. So that's the main reason, as you explained it, Ike.
I think women hates most men. Like
Mm,
most men are not average to it. Most women do not like most men. It's This is how it
okay,
is.
all
But
right.
the hair thing, so true. So when I was there, I would go to the barber and get my hair cut, and I noticed they had memberships for the barbers. So you pay like, I don't know, 120,000 won for a
Mm,
membership, and you get to dye your hair once a month or something. They
yeah,
dye, make it
right.
black. And I thought that was
Mm,
interesting because we don't do that here, right? Actually, barbers are much better in South Korea than here. Barbers are expensive and terrible here. Best barbers I ever had was in South Korea. They wash your hair,
mm,
they cut very well. Anyways, bald, I think they used to be where people didn't care, right? I mean, I was starting to lose the hair, he'd shave his head and it's fine. Now I see a lot. You go to the airport, there's a lot of
mm.
men that have the band around their head and then have the dots,
Yeah.
what I'm talking
I
about?
watched the video actually. The
Yeah.
American that traveled in Turkey,
Turkey, yep.
and they get yeah, Turkey, yeah, and they get like the, how can I say that, the transparenting hair
A transplant,
transparenting
hair transplant,
transplant,
transplant.
hair transplant, yes, hair transplant, and then just return to their hometown. So
Yeah,
it was so interesting. So,
yeah, yeah. So I think now that that's available, men rather do that than lose their hair.
okay, how about you, Ike? Are you feeling your hair is losing these days?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it keeps going farther and farther back the older I get. I don't care though.
You don't care about it?
If
Okay.
it gets that point, I'll shave it off. It's okay. It's
Okay.
okay. I have a
Alright.
girlfriend. She's amazing. So it's like
Mhm.
I
She
don't
doesn't
need
care
to
about your
impress.
hair?
No, no. She cares about the comfortable life that I provide us. So it's
Oh,
like, yeah,
okay. Wow, it sounds really
big
good.
problem.
Yeah, your
Yeah,
girlfriend is really nice
she's
person.
smart. Yeah.
She's smart. Okay,
Yeah.
alright. Okay, we're gonna talk about the stereotype what you have when you first travel in Korea, and actually we talk about your um, quarter life crisis. At the time travel, you worked in Korea as English teacher. You're in your mid 20, and after maybe 5 or 6 years later, you also stayed in Korea a couple of months.
Yeah.
So, what was the difference between
Oh,
the two
that's a
areas?
that's a good question. So this is gonna sound crazy. I wanted to be able to experience a lot of things, like difficult things, right? Like I wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I chose Chang-won. I should have went to countryside because I wanted to experience like a harder life too. Like feeling the hot summer, struggling in the winter. I don't know why. It's just that's something I wanted to feel. So this
That's the
time,
your crisis, you know.
yeah, I guess so. I The second time I went, I was like,
Mhm,
let me go check out um Gangnam, and then I'll travel around South Korea. I'll stick in Gangnam as like headquarters, and then I'll travel around Korea every few
mhm,
days and then come
mhm.
back. So I have somewhere to leave all my stuff. Ended up being that I just stayed in Gangnam the whole time 'cause I kept coding. I just put the cafes and code. I went on Gangnam and I went around, right? Like I enjoyed. I had like fun on New Year's, but the difference this time was I didn't have to go to a hagwon, so
Mhm,
I had a lot more time to just enjoy day to day in South Korea.
mhm,
So I would wake
mhm.
up in the morning. I would go to Actually, I wouldn't even wake up in the morning because I just remembered I was working for a US company at the time. So I had to
Mhm,
wake up at night there in
mhm.
South Korea and then sleep in the afternoon. So because I had to
Yep.
work office hours. So I would wake up late. It was actually a struggle because it was super cold. I was in the worst Airbnb. The picture for the Airbnb made it look big. It was very small. The bed was terrible. There was no heater, so I had to buy a heater because Undul worked, but I needed like a space
Mhm,
here.
mhm,
Um, it was much more of a struggle. But
mm.
I, the funny thing is, the first time I went, I didn't want to come back to the US. The
Mm.
second time I went was such a struggle because it was so cold. I was so uncomfortable. I started appreciating my life in the US. So I
Okay.
wanted to go back the second time. Like, yeah,
Yeah, maybe because you grown up a
Quarterlife
little
Crisis
bit
over.
more. Yeah, and yeah, I definitely. I think you suffered a bunch of things when you stayed the second time. The weather was really cold, almost you're freezing, right? And also
Yeah, it
the
was
bad
very cold.
Airbnb. And as far as I heard from you, you spent a bunch of time for your hobby, your programming at a cafe.
Yeah,
So it
yeah.
was crazy one actually for me, but
Yeah,
I
I would like start I would just walk to the cafe in the snow, it's freezing,
mm,
and sometimes they'll be it actually surprises me how many people sit at cafes in South Korea. So I would go to, like,
mm,
Holly's, and all the tables would be taken. So Korean
mm,
cafes are so good for studying, yeah, just working. They're so comfortable.
yeah.
It's not like here. Actually, all the cafes in the US, nothing like that except for the Korean cafes here. So every Sunday, I go with a couple friends to just sit at a Korean cafe and work on stuff.
Mm.
I
Oh,
actually made
really?
some
Yeah.
Korean friends or ajumas that I
Mm.
talk to. Like, that I practice my Korean with them. It's so funny.
Okay, great. Yeah, the Korean cafe is the multi-use place for everybody. Always warmly welcome to the people, and we do many things at a cafe. So there is a really great place. And as you feel that cafe is everywhere, there are a bunch of cafes around our neighbor, so we can easily access to there. So it is really convenient. It's like almost the convenience stores these days. Actually,
Really?
cafe equal with convenience store. Yeah,
That's
there are a
funny.
lot. Yeah.
There's it's that culture is starting to grow in the US. There's like I said, there's a Korean town near us. It's called Duluth, Georgia.
Mm,
I'm starting to see very 편의점 like things.
mm-hmm,
So there's a like ramen place. This used to not exist in the US where you can go make ramen yourself and eat it there. Right? So like yeah, instant ramen, kind of like the convenience stores in South Korea.
mm-hmm,
And that's
mm.
starting to show up here. Korean culture is
Oh,
spreading everywhere.
wow, interesting. In Georgia?
Georgia.
Uh-huh. Okay. I almost forgot your one of the cool experiences. You trained in I forgot his name. Jung Chansung, the Korean Zombies
Korean
MMA.
zombie. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
So
did.
how
That
was
was
it?
fun. I was
Mm.
it was actually a very good gym. Very good gym. I enjoyed working there, training there a lot. Unfortunately, I didn't get to train with the pros, which I
Mm.
wanted to do, but I just didn't the times that they trained couldn't make. And I was like, I fight amateur, so I don't know if they would even
Mm.
let me. But it was a good gym. I enjoyed training there a lot. I actually
Mm.
learned I saw a couple moves in jujitsu that I still use today that I learned from
Oh,
that gym.
really?
Yeah,
Good for
yeah.
you. Okay. So what's the things? I mean, what's the attack like the yeah, this is the just the video, so you cannot show how the group works. So I'm gonna edit the parts. Okay. Anyway. So
Yeah. I have pictures of it on my Instagram of like the gym I took. It
okay.
yeah, it's a interesting gym.
Okay. I have a question. You've been experienced a bunch of Korean things from culture to your language. I'm just curious. How did you first learn about Korea? It was your school, or where did you get the information?
Oh, where to move, information move. I knew about Korea from League of Legends because I used to play a
League
lot of
of
League of Legends.
Legend. Okay.
Yes. So I played a
There
lot of
was
League of Legends, and Korean's like number one League of Legends, right? Like
ah.
Faker's like a national treasure, right? He
Mm,
got like some award from the president. I don't know. I don't follow it anymore. I used to, but
okay. So
uh,
did you have any stereotype when you first know about Korea? And what is the difference when you first traveling here? What was the main difference?
so I thought it was gonna be I knew that it was a modern society, but I thought it was like modern mixed with traditional. So I was
Mhm.
expecting to see I don't I don't know how to describe it. I was expecting to see more Xijang? Is that what they're called? Xijang?
시장.
I was expecting more Xijang and more like open more often, but they would open like once a week. So I was expecting more of that on the street. But Korea
Mhm.
is very modern, like very modern city. So it's like it does. Sometimes I would see at night, all the trucks would come out, like the ajumas and
Mhm.
ajushis. They would like have the little restaurants, and they would put the.
Mhm.
So that
Yeah.
was the closest thing to what I was expecting. But
Mm.
yeah,
Okay. So, yeah, Korea is very modern and traditional, the mixture things.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
I really like that. But
I
in
did too. That was
Seoul,
good.
I think there is not many these days. Maybe the outside of Seoul, we can see some like this kind of night market, but it is very rare here in Korea. All right.
Yeah.
Ike, let's talk about your diversity. So, how diverse are you and your society?
Me, I have a lot of opinions on diversity, but I'll
Mm-hmm.
keep them simple. So I personally am a diverse person objectively. My mother's Brazilian, my dad's
Mm-hmm.
Pakistani. I was
Mm-hmm.
born in the United States, right? It's very different.
Mm-hmm.
But my ideas are very traditional American. I think I agree with traditional American values. That's what makes America strong. Like everyone has
Mm-hmm.
core thinking. So yeah, that's my society extremely diverse.
Mm-hmm.
Georgia, especially around every urban city in the United States, has people from everywhere, and it's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
mix of a lot of cultures.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It works where everyone wants to be American, and then in
Mm-hmm.
the areas where people don't like America but live here, it causes
Mm-hmm.
problems.
Ah, okay. So, comparison to your society and diversity, how do you think about Korea's diversity?
So Korea, I think it's a super monoculture, right? Everyone thinks the same, wants to do the same thing, and has the same goal. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone doesn't want to stray from that, right? Like there's the
It's
memes,
true.
of like the winter, right? Like you were telling me, it's like everyone wears the same jacket, the same black jacket, the poofy. So it's always that Koreans they really like conforming, but I think this is a
Mm-hmm.
culture thing, right? It stems from Confucianism, and like Japan's very similar, China's very similar. I think it's just that type of culture. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but where I lived, I would go to foreigner bars, right? So foreigner bars, there are people who would come to Korea because they like Korean culture or
Mm-hmm.
other reasons, maybe out of work or something. Those areas extremely diverse. So I would meet people from like Sri Lanka, people that I wouldn't meet in the United States. I met in
Oh.
foreigner bars in South Korea.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm. Yeah. Maybe you went to the Itaewon in Seoul, maybe? The foreigner
yeah,
bar?
Itaewon too. Yeah, Itaewon. This was
Yeah.
actually in Changwon. So in Changwon, there were people
Oh.
from because Changwon's a big engineer uh city.
Yeah, right to the shipyard, right? The
Yep,
shipping
shipyard,
engineer.
welding.
Mm-hmm.
They
Mm.
produce a lot of welded, like skilled labor for welding and
Mm.
engineering and send it to like Europe. They send it to the Middle East. Like, I was actually at a bar and the people say things they shouldn't say at bars. So I was working at a bar and there was a guy from Qatar. He's like
Mhm.
managing, teaching Koreans how to weld
Oh.
for a power plant, like Qatar or something. He was like showing me plans for like a power plant. I was like, you shouldn't be showing me this. This is like a secret. And so I was like, no, but it's very so you meet very interesting people.
Mm.
Even at like
Okay.
what's the airport in Seoul? Incheon. Like the bars in Incheon also interesting. So the
Mm.
bars in Incheon, there's always pilots that
Mhm.
would come and that were on that route. So I would go when the last time I went, I stayed a few days in Incheon at the hotel there before my flight. So I would go to the bar, drink, and I would just hear the stories.
Mm.
I think Korea can be pretty diverse outside of
Yeah,
Korean
but
people.
yeah, outside Korean people, I think you went to some foreign bars, so you can feel that diversity. But like me, the ordinary Korean people, we cannot feel the diversity around our neighbors. So I think that's I cannot say problem, but we have to expose ourselves to the diversity things. So
There's a yeah, I agree that it helps grow, right? But
mm,
yeah, I have a lot of opinions on that. I think Korea should stay Korean,
hmm
but bring in people that love Korea, right? There's a difference between, like, for example, Koreans, a lot of young people, they don't want to become farmers. They want to become the money making jobs. So
hmm
now,
hmm
from my understanding, Koreans need to bring in like Southeast Asian workers to work farms and that kind of thing.
mm, yeah, that's
That's
true.
fine. However, say you decide, okay, these people are now Korean, they're Korean citizens, and they have children. That change, like right now, it'll be fine because Korea will be Korean. But like 3 generations from now, 4 generations from now, it will Korean be more Southeast Asian or stay Korean? Like,
Mm,
it's the more ethical things you need to think about, like how long do you want your culture to live? So Koreans
hmm
need to work very hard to teach their kids what it means to be Korean, else that will be forgotten. Like, for me, for example, my mother is Brazilian, and I
hmm
would go to Brazil every few years, so I have a lot of
hmm
Brazilian in me. However, when
hmm
I have and I only go to Brazil because of my grandma and my grandpa, they're dead, rest in peace, but
mm,
I would go to visit them and my uncles. When my uncles die, there's very little reason for me to go back to Brazil, right? Because I have
mm,
my family there is less. I have less
yeah,
cousins. We're not as close. So my children, they will be almost zero Brazilian because
yeah,
there's no family for them to see in Brazil. They will never
mm,
understand
yeah,
what being Brazilian is to me. So
mm,
Korea, I think, needs to be careful if you care about several generations down the line.
yeah. They're very good point. And as you said, there is no root in a country we cannot visit once again, right? And we maybe forget everything about our identity, where we comes from. And
Mhm.
as you pointed out, this is the most interesting thing to me recently. Uh, I think that more than Seoul, the rural place is more international these days because we hire the other countries' people for the harvesting and the factory work. So when I just stop by some random place outside of Seoul, I can see many foreign people. They are working, and as you said, they just settle and they have a children. The children will grow with the Korean culture, but I don't know how we gonna treat them actually, because most of Korean we are very homogenic people.
Mhm.
So if we have like the different color and different ethnic, I think we cannot still consider they are real Korean. So maybe our mind should be changed one day.
Yeah, that's a difficult one. I mean, they're Korean born, but they will never be Korean, in my opinion, right? Because they're not of the Korean lineage, right? Like just because you're born in if my children are born in South Korea, they're not gonna
Mm.
be a Pak, right? They're not gonna be any of the other Korean surnames, last
Mm.
names.
Yeah, they're
So
gonna be USAP, right?
yeah, they're gonna be Yusuf, right? And that's roots like United States all the way to Asia. It's like not even close to South Korea, the Pakistan.
Yeah,
No.
yeah.
And
So,
that's what it should be, in my opinion. Like, there's nothing wrong with living in another country and not considering, in my opinion, right? I think some people take that offensive, but if my child if I had a child and they were born in Korea, I wouldn't say they're Korean. I would say they're American, to be honest. Like,
Mm,
they're Brazilian descent, Chinese descent, because my girlfriend's Chinese, so she
mhm,
would be like Chinese. She would be us. She wouldn't be Korean. Maybe she'll be Korean
mm,
nationality, but she won't be like actually Korean. And I don't
okay.
think that I'm not offended by that.
Yeah. But yeah, that's a good point. And everybody has a different thought, so it's a fine. All right. So I think you give some of advice to the Korean people regarding your thought in terms of the diversity. Is there anything you wanted to add more? Like, as I explained, the Korean is a very homogeneous culture. So maybe we sometimes the miss some point of the different things. For example, yeah, when we treat some foreign people, we just you know um, how can I explain push it the Korean things to the people maybe. So maybe the diversity will take more advantage for the Korean people, but I think we cannot think about this one. So maybe you wanted to say something to Korean regarding the advantage of diversity.
So
Yeah, hard question, I know.
that's a very hard question. So the advantages of diversity is I think you can secure your immediate future. So
Hmm.
you could secure your life and your family's life much better if you can learn to collaborate with people of many groups. If you learn to do that, I think from my own experience, right? So I deal with a lot of different people from different parts of the world, and we all work together very well. However, at the end of the day, we have our own lives. We don't try to interfere with each other's lives. So
Hmm.
collaborating, perfectly fine. Once you start interfering with each other's lives, that's a different story. So like
Hmm.
Korea's been around for like thousands of years, right? Like a very, very
Yeah,
long
right.
time. Koreans don't have to change, right? Like it's
Hmm.
okay to be Korean and but work with other people. It's okay with people accepting Koreans and not try to change Koreans. I wouldn't try to change too much, to be honest.
Hmm. Okay.
Korea's been around for thousands of years. There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, long history.
People will try to convince you that you need to change. They say we talk about population as a problem, even if Korea's population goes down because of generations of not having children, eventually it
Hmm.
will come back up. Korea will not disappear. There will be a long
Hmm.
period of hard times, but it's not going to be the
Hmm.
first time South Korea has had difficult times. South Korea's have very difficult times many times in history.
Many times. Wow. You know the
Yeah, yeah,
history. Okay.
yeah. It's been invaded by China like a lot of times. Yeah,
Japan,
it's been
Mongol.
everything. And you survived a huge. There's gonna be maybe a huge. It's gonna be everywhere. It's gonna be U.S. might have the same problem. Everywhere's gonna have this problem. It's theoretically right. Like, who knows until it happens? But it's important to stay Korean because once you
Hmm.
start to recover, you don't want to lose that history, right? It doesn't. It shouldn't become like something forgotten.
Yeah.
So yeah. Except immediately use diversity to be able to work with the world. Keep
Hmm.
your Korean culture, like your
Hmm.
identity as Koreans. Don't let other people overpower it, right? Like for example, the farmers moving in, they're having children. Eventually, their children will be able to vote, and they will
Hmm.
vote for un-Korean things, right? Because they were raised in by families that are not Korean, so they will start. So Korea will start tipping
Hmm.
non-Korean. Right. It's for you to decide if you want that or don't want that. Korean people want that or don't. US has a decision. Europe has a decision. Everywhere has a decision. What's right or
Hmm.
wrong, we'll see when we're 60 years old and we're going to be talking about this again.
Yeah, we will. We will talk about these things later. We don't know what will happen, so it's gonna be very interesting topic again. By the way, let's a little, to change our side. I want to talk about the matter you pointed out before. That you think most Korean they always have the same goal and same things they are pursuing. I just think this is because of we are not that very diverse. I mean, we don't have like the diverse people and diverse culture and ideas. So that's the reason we just pursue to have the same goal all the time. So from your point of view, you are surrounded many diverse culture and people. Is it really related or it's just only for Korean culture? How do you think about it?
I don't think so. I think Koreans are very extremely diverse. All populations are extremely
Mhm.
diverse by themselves mentally, right? Like, who cares about skin color and all that stuff? That doesn't matter really. That's all preference. But everyone, I think the problem in South Korea is people are scared to go against the elders, right? Because that's part of Korean culture. So the elder says you have to do this, this, and this. They follow this, this, and this. But if you ask anyone, if you like, when I was teaching the Korean kids, every single one of them was extremely different. None of them were the same, but they
Mm.
grew up to be the same, right? To want the same things because the elders made
Ah.
them do that, right? Like
Mm.
they were forced in that, but they were all very different. So
Okay.
I think overcoming that, right? Don't be scared. You have to take chances, right?
Mhm.
I took chances, right? I went to South Korea. I didn't know what I was doing. I needed something different. You need to take a chance. Not everyone will succeed. It's
Mhm.
unfortunate. Not everyone can be a
Mhm.
winner, right? Because like, if everyone's a winner, then there really is no winner. So like, you take the chances, try to overcome other people's, right? Like that's just how life works. It's
Yeah.
unfair, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is. So your observation is actually correct because I've also experienced that the people is pretty different here in Korea, but when they are growing up, I think the education system and the pupils just, the expectation are the very same. So we are just manipulated by
Yeah.
their expectation. I know you like that word manipulation. So I wanted to use it. So yeah, I think that's the main reason. But as you pointed out, we need to overcome that fear and we just take an action whatever we really pursue and just, be a little more diverse. I
Yeah.
think that
Well,
that's a really great point.
yeah, and like, it's not to be disrespectful to the other. Like you still have to very respect them, right? But you you'll never be able to accomplish anything in life if you can't assert yourself. If you can't
Mhm.
say, "I want this for myself,"
Mhm.
uh, and you can't say that to the people that are above you, like your parents, your whoever, then you're destined to become to not really amount to much, right? You're only gonna achieve like this fraction of what people think you
Mhm.
can achieve. You can only
Mhm.
achieve more than that if you could say, "I want to do this. I will try."
Mhm.
If you can't do those two things, you're not going to go anywhere.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a really good one. Okay, sounds great. Okay, the time flies so fast. Almost 1 hour hit it. Okay, here is the final question for you. What is your life motto to share with this podcast audience?
Life motto. I did not think. I have no idea. I don't know.
You
Say
don't know?
I would joke around and say learn to code, but that doesn't work anymore. Not now that AI is taking over.
AI is crazy these days. Are you
Yeah,
using some tools recently? Which
of
one are
course.
you prefer? I guess you use Cloud Code, right?
No,
No? Which
nope.
one?
I use Klein, the agent, VS Code extension with Grok Code Fast.
Glock
So
Code Fast. hmm
yeah,
I
that's my
I didn't hear
preferred.
that about it.
Yeah, it's like
Mm-hmm.
it's just a model. It's a very fast model for programming because I don't need
Mm-hmm.
too much assistance. I just need when I'm too lazy to type out a whole block. I say, "Hey,
Mm-hmm.
this is what I need. Type out this block," and it'll do it for me. That kind of thing. But it's like AI. We have to embrace AI. Like imagine being a farmer that uses the plow, right? You got a field and
Mm-hmm.
you're plowing the
Mm-hmm.
field,
Mm-hmm.
and then tractor comes out, right? Engine power is automatic, and all the farmers are starting to use the tractors. They're finishing much faster than you. They're, sometimes it destroys a little more than it should have, but they can keep farming. You can't be the farmer with just the plow. You need to learn to use the tractor. So,
Definitely. I 100% agree with your explanation because, these days I feel like the gap between who use AI and who doesn't use AI is a more, like the big gap these days. So even though I'm a known developer, I am not that very familiar with programming. But when I use like the AI tools, the Claude and Cursor and the other cool tools, they made me really great performance. So I I actually didn't expect it how fast I can learn about programming these days. When I
yep.
was young, I always, check the books to find
Hmm.
some of the information, and time after time, I just Google and find some of the community like the Reddit and what was that the most
Stack
the popular
Overflow.
one? Stack Overflow. And then, I don't need them actually these days.
No, no.
I
And it's
just
much
ask
better
it.
because when you ask a question, they're not mean to you. Like, oh, you're stupid. Go,
Yeah.
dude, that's a dumb question.
Yeah, that's what I want to point out. They are very kind and always make me cheerful. So so I can do more than when
Hmm.
I first saw it. And yeah, so that's a really good one. So I just think that I have like my own personal engineer to support me without any expectation.
Exactly. Yeah, you're a manager of engineers now. Yeah, that's how it works. I love it.
Mm,
It's made me much faster.
yeah, much faster. And I already made some of a product.
Yeah.
I buy
Uh,
code, bunch of things. So I created the Chrome programming. I mean the program, like the extension.
extension. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah. Nice.
automatically extracted the articles based on my preference. And
Nice.
also I am trying to make the app for my kids. So we just
Nice.
put the image and the prompt and they make some of the novels for my kids. Yeah.
Oh, nice. That's what I want to do when. So I didn't tell you. Yeah, my girlfriend's pregnant and we're getting married. So yeah, we're gonna have a kid. But
When? Oh my gosh.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
congratulations,
yeah.
Ike.
Thank you. Yeah, August, September. So
August, September.
yeah,
Okay.
so we'll be teaching our
August
kids the
to
same way.
September?
Yeah,
August, September is your the baby's coming
yeah,
day?
yeah.
Okay. My twins August 11th.
No. All right, let's see. Let's see.
Do you know the gender?
No, not yet. We have appointment this week to go.
Okay.
Do everything, set the schedule.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
When will be your the wedding day? I'm gonna give you some present, maybe.
We're just gonna get married like legally, and then we'll have a ceremony once I buy a house. Maybe sometime this year.
Mm,
Still haven't bought a house because it's just not worth. I've been looking every day. Nothing that
mhm.
I'm happy to buy.
Okay. All right. I by the way, I'm really, really congratulate your new chapter over your life.
Thank
And
you, thank you.
welcome to the daddy world. Welcome to the daddy world. We will feel me.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. She keeps telling me that they might be twins because her family has lots of twins. So maybe we'll both have
Oh,
twins.
really?
Yeah,
Okay. We will see what will happen. Okay.
yeah.
Wow. I'm so happy to hear that. This is
Thank
really
you.
great news. Wow,
Yes,
you
yes.
become a father. You always dream it, right?
Yes, that's my goal. Can't wait.
Okay. Okay. Wow. I'm just curious, how many kids are you going to make?
As many as she'll let me have.
Yeah, I know you want many, but
Yeah.
yeah, just to take care of one first and just to
Yeah, of
think
course.
about it later. All right.
Good
Wow.
good advice from a dad. Yeah.
Yeah. Congratulations. Wow. I'm so happy. I'm so happy to hear that. Yeah. Welcome to the daddy world once again. Yeah. All right. So, Ike, we talked a bunch of things, and I'm super happy to get your many observation and opinions. and it will be very helpful for this podcast to everything, not make everybody
I have a
controversial and
feeling.
offense.
I have a feeling people are gonna, who's this guy? Bring him out. I wanna yell at him. I wanna argue with him.
No, 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 no. I don't make it. Okay. All right. So thank you so much for your time, Ike. I, yeah, I really hope you enjoy your day. And again, congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for having me. Yep.
Yeah. So once this podcast will goes very well, please be my guest again. Okay.
Yeah, sure. Of course. It's
All
fun.
right.
It's fun to chat.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ike. Have a wonderful day.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Oh, good afternoon. Bye.
Good afternoon. Yeah.